Welcome to Module 2. I am so glad to have you here. Today we are going to dissect the very first step of the Thrive framework. The Thrive framework goes through 6 different steps: thoughts, habits, routines, intentionality and identity, variables, and expanding your systems. Okay. Today we're just taking one little piece of that and we're going to be focusing and honing in on thoughts. Thoughts. Often we think that thoughts kind of are irrelevant to the whole picture. There's something that happens after the circumstances, after the event. Then you have a thought about it. But I'm going to challenge you today to dig a little bit deeper in that area to see that your thoughts are actually creating the reality that you see around you. So last week we went into the garden. We took a really good view of where we were at, what our garden looked like, the condition that it was in, what areas were blooming and flourishing, and what areas were not. And then we pulled the weeds. We pulled the weeds and started getting rid of some things that were in our way, that we were choosing to let go of and to unclutter from our lives. This week, we are going to be focusing on the dirt. I know, sexy, the dirt. But it's so important. I want you to start really seeing your mind and your thoughts as the fertile ground that's growing your life. Okay? We don't often see it that way. We see it kind of in reverse, that your thoughts are the consequence of what is happening around you. But I'm going to challenge you to really look and see that that's not so. Okay? This is the fertile ground from which we're going to plant the seeds of habit and our routines and all of those things yet to come. This is where we are literally setting the foundation for growth. What shape is your dirt in? Okay. If your thought life is chaotic, if your thought life is chaotic, if your thought life is not creating the results that you want, if what you see around you isn't right where you want, and this isn't in an icky place. You could be having a beautiful, beautiful time, a beautiful life. Things could be going good, but you want to upgrade or up level. This doesn't mean that weeds are taking over your whole garden and it's falling apart and you can't find your tools. Sometimes we misunderstand that this journey is a lifelong. The Uncluttered program, I pray and hope that you stay committed to the process and keep going over it into different seasons of your life. Okay. This isn't a one and done. So this is something like, I don't want you to be like, okay, well, I don't really have weeds in that area. There's always things that we can do to make the soil better, to make it, so that you can, it's flourishing and cultivating even better growth. Okay. Think about gardeners. Once they get just basic gardening down, now we're adding, fertilizers, and we're adding supplements, and we're adding organic matter and better quality organic matter to try to get better produce, better results, better growth. No different in your own life. Okay. So we're looking at the dirt. Thoughts are incredibly important. They're often neglected. And here's the tricky part about thoughts. Other steps in the framework, you're going to see like instantaneous results. You do a habit, you feel better. You do a habit for 3 days. You're like, I got this. Look at me. I'm showing up, because you can visually see it. Okay. Maybe day 7, you fall off and you're like, oh, I'm not quite hitting this where I want to. I gotta reboot and start it again. But sometimes when you're working those routines, you're working those habits, you're working those systems, you're concentrating on things external from you. It almost gives like a different, like a payoff. Like you see the work, you see it out here and in front of you, and you're like, oh, like I'm working on that. I'm doing that thing. Thought work is a little bit different because it's internal and it's happening. And I'll be blatantly honest, sometimes thought work doesn't feel good. Sometimes thought work doesn't feel like that little joy of like washing the dishes and having the sink clean. And you're like, oh, okay. It might actually feel slightly depleting. It might actually feel slightly sad. And it sometimes will shake you and get you going in a little bit different way that can feel really uninstinctual. But I want you to think about, it's like we're shaking up that dirt, moving stuff around and kind of sifting it. We're sifting out the good parts of the dirt that we want. We're taking out the parts like the little rocks or the pebbles or the, broken chunk of plastic out of that area. So to do that, there has to be a little bit of a shakeup. Okay. That's what thought work is going to do for you. And that can feel really scary if it's not something that you're used to. And the results look different. The results are more like cleaning a wound. Okay. The cleaning of the wound, the work that you're doing on the wound doesn't feel good necessarily. It totally can. Well, maybe not cleaning a wound, but thought work can feel good. But sometimes it's actually going to feel a little depleting, and we have to actually take a little extra care of ourselves, making sure we're eating well, we're getting some extra rest, that we're really nourishing our body to do the deep work. Okay, because it's deep in there, deep in that soil. But if you want fast track progress, habits that stick, routines that actually serve you and start building on your progress, okay, systems in place that fast track you to the end result, none of those are possible if you are building those on a foundation of rocky, silty, crumbly dirt. It's just not. It's just they will not take. There's nowhere for those roots to grow, to really become firmly planted. Okay, that's where thoughts come in place. They're very, very, very important. If you had to skip any steps, and I know us mamas like want to do all the things and be the movers, skip all the rest of the framework and work specifically on this module and on the things that are covered in this module over and over and over again. Okay? This is where the change it just magnifies. It magnifies and sets you up for success if you really get deep on this module. Okay? Thought work is imperative, but you won't necessarily feel like it's working until all of a sudden it does. All of a sudden you're in a situation or a circumstance that normally would rile you, and you're like, my kids are screaming in the back of the car while I'm driving, and I feel really peaceful and filled with joy. What happened? What happened? Suddenly, a late notice pops up on your bank thing, and you're like, oh, I thought that was taken care of. Oh no, I'm like $200 short this month compared to what I thought. What happened? And instead of feeling absolutely overwhelmed with anxiety and stuff, you become curious. And you're like, all right, well, I got to shuffle that around and figure that out, and it's figure outable. It's not going to actually just take the wind out of your sails and knock you down. That's when you start seeing, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I think that thought work stuff is working. Like it actually starts shifting who you actually are. Okay. Your beliefs about life, your beliefs about yourself. And it starts ingraining it into your actual like DNA and cellular level, like who you are and how you show up in the world. So it's very subtle, but the change is huge. It's a huge payoff in the end. It just in the moment doesn't necessarily feel, it's like little grains of sand that are starting to embed and become a part of who you are. Okay. And then all of a sudden you see, and it's like, bang, everything looks different. You're like, wow, I'm like 3 months out, and I look back and I'm not even the same person, because you've started shifting your thoughts, playing in that area of what's possible, changing your beliefs, and then changing your being. It just kind of like saturates through into who you are. Okay. All day long, as women, I think in particular, we are bombarded with conversation in our head to ourselves. Often, at least in my world, it's not necessarily very edifying conversation. It's like, oh, you dropped the ball again there. Figures. Of course you would. Oh, another cup of coffee? Really, Ange? Really? Like the 5th one today? Impatient with the 3-year-old again. And you coach moms how to be patient with their kid. Interesting. Constant bombarding of myself picking on myself, of myself trying to give myself motivational speeches, of myself going through the running to-do list that's in my head of, things that have to get accomplished and get done. Meanwhile, okay, so we've got that internal dialogue constantly churning, cranking. Meanwhile, we have our kids bombarding us with information. Our husband, our partner, our family, our friends bombarding us with information. Some that we're responsible for, so we're trying to churn that out. We have businesses, we have homeschool, we have these other things that are taking up thought space and time and real estate in our head. And then we just have like the external layer, the news, the media, social media, the shoulds, the if I only would have XYZs. All of this is constantly going on in our mind. And the thing that's really interesting about your brain, just as a functional tool, it doesn't necessarily dissect and understand the difference between, one, reality and what hasn't actually happened. So when, or what's not even, and then like truth and what's not true. So when you walk by a mirror and you're like, oh, I'm so out of shape. Your brain doesn't even necessarily have the time to like go back and be like, is that really true? Is this an accurate depiction? Are we being a little hard on ourselves? It just is like, we're out of shape. Okay, cool. We're out of shape. And I would argue that it actually starts processing the rest of its functions with that as a fact. We're out of shape. Suddenly we're feeling a little more sluggish. We're feeling a little more lethargic. Okay. We're feeling more out of touch with our body and with ourself because we're programming ourselves to have these things as factual tracks of our life. We need to be really, really careful if the things that are happening internally and externally are what we want to be programming. Is that what you want to be saying to yourself? Is the catastrophic news the thing that you want to be programming your emotional center and nervous system with? Very, very likely we are letting things in that do not serve us in the way that we want them to, okay? I do believe everything that we experience serves us and limits us in different ways. But is this where we want to be putting our energy and our time? And if it's not, like Marie Kondo says, does it bring you joy? If it doesn't, we need to start getting real about letting it go. I tend to get really wound up really easily and have high anxiety. For quite a few years, I can't watch the news, the regular actual news. That doesn't mean I don't check up on what's going on in the world and that I'm not very knowledgeable about the things that are going on politically or, worldview news, even locally. But I'm very selective about how I get that information and how I internalize it. Because watching the 5 o'clock news every day, it does not serve me. It does not serve me. It limits me hugely. Okay. It does serve me in the way that I know what's going on, but the amount of emotional bandwidth that it takes for me to process that information and try to dissect and pluck it out of my soil, the parts that like, I didn't need to hear about the 93rd homicide right now today. And that's in no way to disrespect those people and stuff. These news stories are important, but knowing where I can be of best service and best use and limiting what else I let in, super critical and important, okay? So the first thing that, let me just touch base here. You want to start getting really, really honest with yourself and listening to that dialogue, okay? That's the first place to start. We can limit some of the external noise, but I want you to really, really first start and listen to what's going on inside, internally, okay? And getting really curious about the conversations you're having with yourself all day long, okay? The results that you have in your life on the exterior is going to give you some big clues about the quality of soil that you're currently planting in. And if there's areas that you feel need more growth, need more nurturing, need more water and more bloom, if you're not happy with all the areas that you currently have at where they're at, I'm going to challenge you to tell you that it's probably something in your thought patterning that is not allowing for that next level result. Okay. So we want to really, really get curious about what's going on in our own mind. Okay. What are we saying to ourselves? What are we saying about ourselves? What are we saying about our roles? What kind of wife are you? What kind of mother are you? How are you showing up for those things? And I mean, really saying about those things. If the world asks me, I think I'm a dang good mom. I put my kids above pretty much anything. I will, mama bear till the end day. I am very present with them, okay? But my internal dialogue says I could be more intentional with my time sometimes and not be trying to juggle business and them and to-do lists all at one time. That I could be more patient with them. That I could be more present in certain periods of our time, like bedtime routines, and not feel like it's just like, whew, okay, winding down, like, let's get them on down. There's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. So I want you to get really honest about some areas where you're maybe over criticizing yourself, and get really honest about some areas that you're like, I really don't like where that's at right now. And that's okay. You can still be so grateful. You can hold that polarity. Be so grateful for where you are and so hungry for more at the same time. And I think that is something, especially for women, that's really hard for us to kind of hold hands with both. You can love your husband, love your marriage, and be so grateful for it, and still desire more intimacy, more communication, better communication, date nights. Like, it's okay to hold hands with those things and have them happen at the same time. You can absolutely be head over heels for your 5-year-old and still have tons of areas that you want them to grow and nurture in character and self-discipline. Like, that's okay. Same with yourself. You can love the body that you're in and still want to lose 10 pounds. These are not exclusive ideas. They get to marry one another and move with harmony. Okay? We are the ones who usually are bringing dissection to that and making it mean something bigger and more complicated than it really has to be. Okay? So I want you to really take time to start listening. Start listening to what's going on in your mind. Okay? And when you find a thought that you really feel like, ooh, that's out of alignment with who I want to be, that's out of alignment with the vision I have for my life, I want you to try to take a moment to text it to yourself, make a voice memo, write it down. Okay? The first step in changing anything about the soil is to take a pH test on where's the soil at. Okay? What is currently going on in the soil? We need to know the soil intimately and deeply so we can understand what needs to be added to it to create the growth that we want. Okay? And that's what we're going to do for our thought life. Everything that we have in our life comes back to our thoughts. There's a fly that is driving me nuts. I don't know how he got in my bedroom with me, but he wants to hang out. So if you see my eyes doing this, because he's buzzing and fluttering. He's buzzing and fluttering around me. All right. Another thing you need to know is that just like, the example of the dirt being our thoughts also kind of set the standard and temperature for your life. Okay. It's like a thermostat. Everything that happens in your life with the fluctuations, like you make more money this month. Oh, and then you make more money this month. Less money this month. And that kind of fluctuation. You're really patient with your kids. You're not so patient with your kids. This ebb and flow, it's a natural part of life. But I'm going to challenge that our thoughts kind of determine the peaks of those ebb and flows. We want those ebb and flows. That's just a natural part of growth. But ideally, we wouldn't have big, huge, catastrophic drops. We would have ebb and flows that would lead us this way. If that makes sense, where it's a constant climb to the next level. Yes, it's going to have peaks and valleys, but that we're constantly making progress. Sometimes when we have our thermostat set in an area that we don't want it at, in our subconscious thought mind, we set the temperature somewhere where we're not actually comfortable. Well, you're comfortable, that's why you're there. But it's not comfortable in the way that that's where you want to be. Like, I'm a chill baby, okay? So maybe my thermostat's set at 62, even though I'm a chill baby, but I'm a chill baby who likes comfort of like a 72, like give me blanket and fuzzy socks. But yet it keeps crawling me back down because something in my subconscious thoughts and beliefs isn't allowing for me to break out of that pattern of that thermostat. It's ingrained in my programming that it's going to bring me back to that thermostat default. Okay. This can, so that thermostat that thermostat is set by tons of different contributing factors. The way we grew up and were raised, our self-identity and how we see ourselves and what we're capable of and what's available to us. what we think is possible under our circumstances, under our station in life, by our age, our, gender, by our race, our religion, our nationality, all of these things, these cultural ideas of who we are can play into where that thermostat is set, where our beliefs and our core thoughts are set and locked in at, okay? Our financial statuses growing up, our financial statuses now, okay? The boundaries that we have set for what's acceptable in our relationships, what's acceptable in our day-to-day life, expectations that we have of ourselves and others, cultural expectations, habits, whether they're self-conscious or consciously being programmed. Sometimes those habits can set us up into a cycle of where our thermostat is set for our beliefs and our thoughts. The environment that we currently have, and the environment of our past life with, growing up, things that we've experienced in that way. The people that we allow into our space, into our lives, people that have been in our space and in our lives, and what we consume, whether good, bad, or indifferent. The things that we consume feed into our thoughts and our beliefs that are our set parameter and our thermostat for our life, okay? There's more things, and like you can name probably a ton of other things that have contributed to kind of where you have set that belief system. But that's just a big handful of some of the things that really get in there and dig deep to start creating who you are on a really deep, intimate level, deep inside there. And some of these things you don't even know. You might not even realize are there. I know I've had some limiting beliefs that shocked me when it came into the business sphere. Not about women owning businesses, but women being able to invest back in their businesses. That's been huge for me. Like, oh, moms can't invest that much in themselves, but yet if they were dads, they can. Like, where did I come up with that? I've never realized I had gender discrepancies like in my own programming and how I, approach the world. I know that they're there. I know that there's pay differences and stuff like somewhere, in the realm, but it hasn't affected me personally. I'm actually, the work that I do as a dance instructor, I would say female dominated. So I've never experienced that myself in that kind of way. But to see how it creeps into your subconscious though, like, oh, moms can't afford XYZ. Even entrepreneur moms, they must be struggling. Money must be tight for them. Why do I think that? Well, because I'm a mom and an entrepreneur and money has been tight for me. Based on my past experience and where I came from. Money mindset things has been something that has really challenged me. But that doesn't mean that that's true for all moms. Just like I don't find nighttime parenting to be very difficult. And that's in no way to take away, because I know how difficult it can be for some mommies and even for myself in some nights. But I have a pretty good flow with it. It doesn't really shake me up, and I don't feel extra tired in the morning, even if I'm parenting at night. Now, say that to a mom who's a first-time mom with a 6-week-old. It's a whole different life experience that she's having. Having my 12th baby and nighttime parenting was literally like going shopping. Like, it just wasn't that hard. But he was an easy baby too. There's so many contributing factors to where our thermostat is set and what we think is normal for people's lives. Okay. And we're going to get so much deeper into that, because that also, is self-identity and who we believe that we are, and creating a new identity for ourselves and all of that. That's a big piece of it too. That's really, really important. But these things are constantly influencing our baseline and setting the stage for how we're showing up for ourselves, for our motherhood, for our job, for our spouse, and into the world. Okay. So we really, really want to get these things in check. Thoughts become things. It's kind of cliche, and if you Google that, you're going to find tons of little like cute quote bars and stuff like that, but it's true. Everything that you see around you, whether it be a table, the cell phone in your hand, the plane that you flew on last year, the automobile that you're going to drive in later today, at one point, those things were just merely thoughts. They were just thoughts. Something about that shook me when I realized that, because I have these dreams and these ideas and they seem so far-fetched. Like to have a patient home where there's no yelling and stuff, like, oh, that doesn't happen when you have kids or teenagers. Why? At one point, people thought it was absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous that human beings with no wings would fly, yet alone in a machine that can carry hundreds of them at one time. And it wasn't that long ago. At one point, it was a ridiculous idea or notion that women would be able to vote, yet alone hold office. It just wasn't a thing, okay? Or that we would have wheels that would carry us around regularly, not just like the elitist people in the community that would have one of these bizarre, gas-powered machines, but you would almost need one to function in the United States of America, okay? Yet alone one that could hold 15 people. That's what mine does. Ooh, ooh. Okay? These were just a vision, a thought, a daydream of somebody's at one point, and they are part of our regular staples of our life now. So I don't want you to ever discount the dreams that you have, the thoughts that you allow yourself to go and play with, because why are those any less real or capable of taking root than something like an airplane, a spaceship, a boat, a big, huge container that can carry lots of things or lots of people that can float on an ocean? I mean, really think about that. If you dissect that backwards, how crazy that must have sounded at one point. And yet, thousands of years ago, they were making them, out of wood and with really rudimentary tools, and still floating things across oceans and Great Lakes and rivers. The Mississippi River, like, hoofda, okay? Second piece, so that's the first piece. Everything you see was once a thought, okay? Everything you want to see in your life that is now a thought can take root if you allow it to, okay? If you believe that it's possible for you, it will be. Which leads us into part 2. Everyone says, well, I'll believe it once I see it. I'm going to challenge you that if that is the way that you are thinking about things, you're never going to see it, okay? Or I'll see it to believe it, that kind of thing. No, I want you to believe it until you see it. Believe it until you see it. I believe that teenagers could have amazing connections with their parents. I've honestly believed that forever because I've always worked with teenagers as a dance instructor. And I'm not going to lie, there's challenging moments in being the mom of teenagers. But I think they're amazing creatures. They're literally phenomenal. And I don't buy into the notion that having a teenager is like horrible and hard. Same with terrible twos. I don't believe those things exist. And I'm going to kind of boldly proclaim, because I don't believe in that, I don't experience the things that normal parents experience with their terrible twos and their terrible teens. I just don't. I'm not available for it because I don't accept that as the reality of how it is. And that does not mean we don't have trying moments. You have trying moments with any human relationship. But it looks entirely different in my home than it does in a lot of homes. Even with moms that come to me and work with me. Because they think it has to be hard. They think teens have to be disconnected. They think teens have to be disrespectful and rude. And it has to be this constant battle of wills. Does it? Or is that a thought that got ingrained that we just decided was real and we just allowed it to go into our thermostat, into our programming, and that became our baseline? Okay. Another one, super, super common in motherhood circles, is moms are supposed to hate their mother-in-law. Like, wives should hate their mother-in-laws. It's just like a thing. It's like a rite of passage. If you don't hate your mother-in-law, are you even married? I don't buy into that. I think that's ridiculous. On both ends, I've always had a decent relationship with my mother-in-law. We get along fine. I've never really had any major issues with her. There's some familial issues with like my husband and his relationship, because he grew up in a lot of abuse and things like that, that his family is all healing from. So there's some turbulence there just with that healing process. But me and her personally have never really had any issues. I don't have any hateful feelings towards her. I hope it's the same for her. I mean, I don't ask, but like, and same with, now I'm in a place in my life where I am the mother-in-law, and I have a beautiful daughter-in-law, and she's one of my best friends. Like, we get to recreate these things and rewrite them. We get to look at every single piece critically and be like, is that something that I want to buy in? Or do I get to declutter that crap? Let it out, uncluttered. That's not a belief that I think serves me. And I always for me personally, I always say, is this in line with God's best? Would God want the two most important women in a man's life to be fighting each other? No. So that can't be God's best. Then that's not part of my programming. That is not something that I want to be a part of my human experience, because I believe when God first created man and woman, that was not how he had intended it to be. You know, he's not a God of destruction and constant turbulence. He's just not. So then, no, that doesn't get to be a part of my programming. I won't allow that in my thermostat. It's not part of my belief system. And I let go of that thought. Now, there's still going to be moments. There's going to be moments. We live in a fallen world. People are human. We're going to make errors. But it changes how you handle those things for sure. My daughter-in-law and I have had times we don't agree. And we've gone roundabout in such a loving, compassionate way. Doesn't mean either of us maybe didn't do a little eye roll or like, oh, come on, like, you're not listening, in our own, way. But it always came back to relationship and reconnection. Always came back to that. And we were able to have these beautiful debates and conflicts and discussions about, how we both felt openly, safely, and knew that when it was done, we were reconnected and back to normal, even if we didn't agree. That was okay. All right. So thoughts become things. Everything you see around you was once a thought. What things are you creating in your life that you don't necessarily want to be there? And what things are you underthinking about that we need to start thinking and dreaming about more so that we can bring them into fruition? Okay. Part 2, we're going to believe it to see it. No longer are we going to wait for the evidence. We are going to create the evidence through faith. We are just going to hold tight, and it might not happen today. It might not happen tomorrow. You guys, I have this book. I should have brought it. I didn't even think about that. I have a book where I'm supposed to do it every day. I'd be lying if I said I did. But I write 10 things that I'm grateful for. Okay? And this isn't like your normal gratitude list where I'm grateful for my kids and my house. No. This book is really special because the way that I do it is I really lean into what I think desires that God has put on my heart and where he wants me to be stepping into, okay? And then I write it as though it's already happened. It is already done, but it's usually things that haven't happened yet. When I first started the practice, I couldn't do it quite that way because it felt like, well, I don't actually have that thing. Like it didn't feel real. So when I first started it, I called it my 5 and 5. And I would write, I am so happy and so grateful now that, and then whatever it was. And the reason I called it the 5 and 5 is because I would do 5 things that were real, like real, as in I could touch them tangibly. I am so happy and grateful now that I am living in this beautiful house that I love. Okay. I really love my house where I live. So, boom. But we're renters. So then I might write, I am so happy and grateful now that I have been able to purchase this house and buy it in my name. Okay. I am so happy and grateful now that I have a safe, reliable 15-passenger van for my kids. That's something I've been writing since 2019 that just came to fruition in, I think it was August of 2021. Okay. So I have this notebook every day. It's not every day, but every time I write in it, I do 10 of them. And now I'm to the point where most of them are things that haven't actually happened in a physical sense yet. I can't tangibly touch them, but I have faith that God is leading me there. And so I'm grateful and I'm thankful that that's happened in my life. And then once a quarter or once a month, depending on what I'm feeling into, I take a highlighter And I go back through that book and I highlight the things that God has been so faithful in and has created in my life. And you guys, I should do a live in the group and show you. You will be shocked at how much of that book is highlighted. I was shocked, like tears pouring from my soul, because I couldn't even believe. I just randomly got this idea to like grab a highlighter and go back through. And I could not believe how many of those things had come to pass. Okay. And they all started with a little mustard seed of faith that if it was meant for my life and if it was God, in alignment with God's best for me, that it would be. And it was, I just would write it. I would feel it and be like, thank you, God. Like this or something better. This or something better. Because I have full trust and faith that he will lead me there. And then I close the book and I put it away. I don't like put pressure on it. I don't like then take those and translate them into your like planner to make sure you're hitting the marks. No, I just put it out there, hold space for it. Every once in a while, I'll go back and kind of read it and remind myself. And I always touch my heart. I don't know why, it's just my thing. And I like touch my heart. I'm like, ooh, that would be fun. Ooh, a 15 passenger. That would feel so good to be able to take like all my kids to the pumpkin patch at one time and like not have to rely on other people, or know that if there was an emergency, like a wildfire were to break out, I could evacuate with all my kids and our pets and be safe. Like what an amazing blessing. Amen. And I just would feel into it like that. And these things came to pass. So many of them came to pass. But I had to have the thought first, and then I had to believe that it was possible. And then I ended up seeing so much of it come to pass. And you will too. I really honestly believe that. Okay. And so that's two of the main things I really want you to start going through. And I want you to first just get really real about what's going on in your mind. Okay. I want you to do a thermostat check. Where's your thermostat at? Where do you have beliefs that need to be uncluttered and let go of? Because they're mucking where you want your thermostat at for your life. Okay. If you believe, or if you really want a good relationship with your husband, but your thermostat's down at a 59 right now, something's going on internally and externally that isn't in alignment with what you actually want. It's time to get real about that and start seeing what action steps we can take to get that, to tune up that front thermostat, to get it a little hotter, get it moving where we want it to be. Okay. So those two things, gonna start really paying attention to your internal thoughts and calling them out when they don't align with what you want. Okay. Number 2, we are going to be looking at some of the programming and things around us that are setting that thermostat where we don't want it to be. And I personally find some people believe you have a thermostat just overall. And I do think that's true, but I think it's an average of these thermostats in your life. So like my financial thermostat could be like a 25-degree. My parenting thermostat might be up in the 80s, and things are going really good and feel really fluid with that. Okay. So yes, my overall might be somewhere in, down lower, but you can fine tune and focus on one area too. Like right now, it's a season I've been really, really working hard on my financial literacy, my financial mindset, working with a financial coach to really fine tune and build that muscle. Okay. Because I know I could be focusing on all the things, but by focusing on this lower bar, once this lifts, the average of all these is going to be higher too. Okay. So really getting honest about your thermostat and seeing where it's set at. And then I want you to start thinking about this transitional piece. Okay. So first we have the thought. We have a thought like, ooh, it would be fun to have a 15 passenger. I like those. This is such a dorky example, but you'll get the point. You'll get the gist. Then we move that. We touched on this a little bit last week. We move that into the heart space of like, oh my gosh, like what would having a 15 passenger van do for me and my family? Like what a blessing. Like I could go get a grocery haul and not have to like pull out car seats every single time and stuff, because I would actually have room for it. I would be able to move all of us if there's an emergency or just a fun event that I wanted to bring us all to, like the drive-in theater. Like, oh my gosh, that would be so much fun. Like, oh, and you really feel it. It might, if you're not good at like, not good, but like if imagination and that kind of playing, like you're not a daydreamer, this might feel extremely awkward and weird for you, but that's okay. do it anyway. Okay. This is kind of like if you've ever been little and like singing in your hairbrush and you legit were on like MTV and were like the coolest girl ever and like doing the hair flips and like singing and like, you know, pretending you're that person. When you're little, you're so good at it. You don't ever be like, oh, this is ridiculous because I'm not really Madonna. You just buy in. You just buy in. And for that minute, you might as well be Madonna because you're so invested. I want you to play with that energy again and get back to that place where you could allow yourself to be absorbed and saturated with your dreams. Okay. And these don't have to be big and fancy. This could literally be like, ooh, I really wish I had $100 extra this month because bills are a little tight. Ooh, okay, what would that feel like? That would feel like I had a little bit of extra ease and I wouldn't have to be stressing. Like I would be able to make sure everything was covered and we'd have a little bit of extra at the end. And like really pressing into that, like what would that feel like? How would I approach my bills differently? How would I approach my work? Where it wouldn't be like this hunger for like, I have to get one more person. I have to get one more person because I need that extra $100. You know, if it was already in existence, what would that feel like? I would just be able to show up for work and know my bills were already covered. I was good. And then, so we go from thoughts, just thinking like, oh, I like that. Okay. To feeling, truly feeling it and embracing that. So that's really where thought life and that mindset stuff turns into belief. When you attach emotion to the thoughts, suddenly it's a belief. How do we know? Because have you ever listened to people talk about politics and what they believe? Whew, whew. It gets heated so fast. It's like everything's a personal attack. Even if, you know, no matter what you could literally disagree on like who ran a better campaign ad. And it's like, people are literally like, I'll never speak to you again. Now, I'm not saying to go there, but that's beliefs. Beliefs become really embedded and fired up with emotion. Okay. Now we want to use ours in a much better way than that. We want to empower ourselves to not behave in that direction of beliefs, but to be so solid in who we are and so confident, and our roots are so deep that those conversations don't leave us wavering. We're able to have an articulate, educated conversation with people who believe absolute opposite than us and leave it with a place of love. Okay? Leave it without feeling like we have had Band-Aids ripped off of us and we're leaving with a wound, with a hole. All of that is just uncluttered belief systems and thoughts that have emotional attachments that, like, if you don't agree with me, it means I'm not worthy. If you don't, pick my side, it means I'm wrong. What does being wrong mean about me? Okay. That's just undone thought work. And we can totally get deeper into some of these processes of how to do some of these steps of the thought work. But for now, I want you to just listen to what your thoughts are, check those thermostats in your life and kind of rate them and see what areas are you feeling really confident in and what areas need a tweaking. Okay. And then really think about integration of these thoughts. So I kind of keep cutting myself off on that, but like we have a thought. Oh, okay. I like that. Now we have a belief. The belief is becoming the thought attached with emotion. Okay. But we all know beliefs do us no good unless they're integrated into who we are as human beings and to how we present ourselves to the world. Okay. So we go from thought to belief to being. It has to become a part of your being. And that is really, really tricky. Really tricky. Okay. It doesn't have to be, but we often complicate that. And that's where a lot of this, we go back to thoughts. What thoughts need to be dissected and pulled apart to actually allow for that integration to happen, for us to really step into who we believe and think we are and what in that alignment. Okay. So that's your 3 steps of homework for this week, is getting really, really honest with yourself about your thought life, where it is right now, that internal dialogue, and calling yourself out on it every single time. That's going to take diligence. That alone, that could be a standalone assignment for the whole week, because that's going to keep you busy. Okay. And that's an assignment that I'm putting on you for life. This isn't a 1 week and done. This is a new you. Okay. We're going to integrate that to be a part of who you are. Okay. We're going to get really, really curious and really, really careful about how we're speaking to ourselves and what we're allowing in that space. Okay. 2, we are going to check our thermostats. Check our thermostats out and see where everything is at. Again, curious. It's okay if your thermostat's just broke, and it's just not even working in a certain area. We're gonna get it. We're gonna get it all fine-tuned and ready. Okay. We're just getting our ground tilled and clean and abundant right now so that we can start planting those seeds and seeing things grow. So we just want to get a really good snapshot of where it's at right now so that we know what to add. Okay. And then 3, really thinking, even if you just pick 1 or 2 things to start integrating, where you're going to have a thought, like a thought that I would really like is I'm a patient mom. Okay. Then we move it to feeling. What would it feel like to be a patient mom? How would that change my relationship with myself? How would that change my relationship with my kids? How would I show up every day if I was a patient mom? And how do I show up now? How does that feel different? Okay. What would that feel like? And then how do we get to integrate that into who we are every day? So what would integration look like when you're not quite there? So for that example, I would be like, I am a patient mom. So no longer would I tell people like, oh my gosh, I'm so impatient. Like they drive me crazy. Every time they screech, it just kills. No. Because I'm resetting my thermostat. Doesn't mean that thought just goes away. Okay. But I'm no longer going to engage it. I'm not going to engage it. I'm going to replace it. And you can even replace it in stair steps where I'm not patient yet. Or I'm working on being a more patient mom. I'm working on being a more patient mom. Okay. And then the integration is that I'm shifting that, how I see myself, right? And every time that I feel like I'm getting impatient, I'm going to whisper. I'm going to bring my voice way down. I'm going to put my hand on my heart. I'm going to physically touch people. Obviously do that in a safe way. If you're really feeling heated and stuff, don't be touching anybody. You have to take a moment back. But you're going to get lower and you're going to be like, hi. Okay, mommy needs you to be real quiet right now. Hey, can you go get that coloring book I asked you 3 times to pick up off the floor? And I'm telling you, the first time that you whisper at your kids when they are used to you raising your voice is hilarious because they're like, and they kind of like, wait, what? Are you whispering at me? But it actually works so well. So that's an example of how integration would look. We have the thought, we want to be patient. We start actually feeling into that. What would that feel like? How are we talking to ourselves? We're checking that internal dialogue, choosing new words, and then we're integrating it in our actions on the level of being. How can I be more patient? I'm going to whisper instead of yell. I'm going to take a moment and remove myself from the room for a second, catch my breath, count to 30 and come back. I'm going to text a friend. I'm heated instead of exploding to my kids. And she's going to know that's coming and she's going to remind me you're doing such a good job. You're so patient. I'm going to go post in Uncluttered and be like, I need a moment. It's coming. I'm exploding. I don't know how to navigate this moment. Okay. That's what integration looks like, where we're able to catch it and call ourselves out on our own BS and reassess it and pivot it quickly instead of allowing it to take us over. Because sometimes we get to that place where have a thought, we start feeling it, but that implementation portion is lacking. We're not sure what steps to take. And if you feel stuck there, post it in the group and we can help hammer that out. We can even do it on our weekly call. Okay. Don't let yourself get stuck. It is natural to get stuck. You're going to get stuck. You're going to get stuck. Maybe not on this lesson, but the next one. Or maybe not today, but the next day. That is a natural part of just being you, being me, being human. Staying stuck's a choice. We don't have to stay stuck. That no longer is where our thermostat is set. We get to choose to get unstuck and to get uncluttered and to find a better path. Okay, but you got to advocate for yourself. Be willing to put yourself out there and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. This is when I need my sisters. Help me re-see this. How would you implement this? How would you turn this into belief? What thoughts would you be thinking if this is what you wanted for your end result? Okay. All right. That is it for module 2. I'm going to do a video where I think I'm going to walk you guys through my 5 and 5 journal, because it is a really beautiful practice, but I don't want you to add it right now if you are already feeling overwhelmed. If you are already feeling overwhelmed, or like you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to do, don't add it right now. Don't add it right now. But it is a nice fluff piece that can amplify the results once you're feeling ready for amplification. Right now, we're just going to unclutter and back up and get it to the simplest sustainable step possible. Okay. That's why you're going to find I'm not going to give you a ton of worksheets and workbooks and all the things, because you don't need them. You have enough on your plate right now. You have enough. I want you to pull it back a little bit and get into a place where you feel like you have the bandwidth and space to then take on 1 or 2 of these extra little amplifiers. Okay. I love you so much. You are doing such a great job. And yeah, just be really cautious of your thoughts, because you deserve to think great and wonderful things about yourself too. All right. Mwah.